HarperCollins presents Special Forces K-9 by Julie Miller, read by Jen Tophoney.
For service, therapy, emotional support animals, and pets. Yes, there is a difference in both training and legal designation. Thank you for all the ways you make our lives better. Always be sure to ask before petting a dog. Even if the dog is a pet, this is essential to prevent bites. Service dogs should not be petted, fed, or otherwise given attention while at work. Please be respectful and allow these dogs to do their jobs. They make a major difference in the lives of people with disabilities. Chapter 1. This was a bad idea. Mr. Hunter? Ben Hunter dragged his attention away from the indefinable noises that were reverberating inside his head and focused on the 50-ish woman who ran the dog training business, where he was interviewing for a job. If he thought about it, he could identify the noises. Children playing, dogs barking, a man talking on the phone, someone rapping along with a song in the barn behind him. Not the footsteps of an enemy sneaking up behind him, nor the babble of a foreign language threatening him with words he barely understood. Not the click of a landmine being triggered, nor the screaming agony of his teammates dying in a barrage of gunfire. Sometimes, too much of any kind of noise was a headache-inducing time bomb that could flash him back to the nightmare he could never truly wake up from. He probably wasn't making a good impression on his potential new boss with his distracted thoughts. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you say that again?" Jessie Caldwell offered him a friendly smile, as if this wasn't the first time she'd had to repeat a question to a prospective employee. Or a man. Or a stitched-together soldier like him, trying to make a new life for himself now that the Army couldn't use him. Not with his PTSD, or his scars, or his missing hand. "I asked if you had any experience milking a goat." "Goats? Yeah." Ben shook his head and tried to smile, but friendly wasn't a look he was much good at pulling off these days. "When I was a kid, we'd visit my aunt and uncle on their farm in the Ozarks, down near Carthage. We'd help with chores, including moving hay, feeding the animals, mucking stalls, driving the tractor, and milking their cow and goat." He instinctively looked down at the prosthesis sticking out from the end of his left sleeve. "I suppose I could still manage it with one hand." She hugged her arms over the insulated vest she wore on top of her flannel shirt and studied his labored attempts to engage in casual conversation. "Sounds like a fun experience for a kid growing up." "Yep." "Oh, so eloquent, Hunter," he silently chided himself. The idea of getting a job where he had to interact with people like this nice lady was about as bad as breaching that rebel encampment in the middle of a Central American jungle, when every instinct inside Ben's head had told him he and his team were heading into a trap, that their intel was flawed, that their mission to rescue a kidnapped diplomat and his family was about to go sideways. Even his K-9 partner, Smitty, had barked furiously, warning them to stand down, that he sensed a danger they could not see. But Ben had been a soldier who followed orders. When the captain had ordered his team to go in hot, they had. Then all hell broke loose, and Sergeant Ben Hunter's life had changed forever. Ben curled his right fist against his thigh, tapping it several times in an effort to slow his breathing and keep himself in the moment, to pay attention to what the woman beside him was saying. "We've recently expanded and are almost to capacity with our kennels and barn stalls," Mrs. Caldwell explained. "I have a teenager who comes in part-time to help, but my husband and I have recently adopted our 2 children, and motherhood happily demands more of my time. I'm looking for someone to live on the property and work full-time, to take over some of the appointments and duties I've done on my own for a few years now. I'm assuming the salary and furnished apartment I mentioned sound like fair compensation?" Easing the grip of his fingers, Ben nodded his understanding, even though he hadn't heard the first few words she'd said. Maybe it was the noisy dog in the last kennel at the end of the run, barking his fool head off, that was mentally sending him back to that botched mission. Smitty had raised a ruckus just like that on that fateful morning. But there were no guns here, no enemy combatants. He wasn't even in uniform anymore, save for the long camo army jacket he wore to ward off the cool autumn breeze, and to hide his prosthetic hook strapped onto his left elbow and shoulder. His jeans, work boots, and beard that was neatly trimmed, but several inches past the length he'd worn on missions.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?